All right, back with part 2 out of 3 of our report card series. This time we're going to be zooming into mobility and conditioning. And so just our objectives for the day: continue to introduce that new report card resource and dig deeper into that mobility and conditioning practices and benchmarks. So to reiterate, what is the intent of the report card? A helpful goal setting tool. There's going to be some outcome goals that provide direction, some process goals that provide the plan of how to get there. And we also care a lot about your identity goals. Who are you? Who do you want to become? But this resource will focus more on the previous 2.
And we encourage you guys, if you haven't watched the first one that we did in this series, start there first. We dive into some of this stuff a little bit more of our why. Mm-hmm. Now we're just, like I said, continuing down the line of our report card.
Love it. Yeah. So the report card can also just be a way to celebrate and share milestones along your journey, and a way to ensure we don't miss low-hanging fruit. And for these 2 sections specifically, I think that can be really valuable. A lot of people love getting big and strong, and that might be the primary reason they're coming into the gym, which we love. The population needs that for sure. But before we move on to the elite sections there, let's make sure we're at least doing okay in these sections as well. Yeah. So again, a little snapshot overview there of what the report card looks like. You got your mobility, strength and power, conditioning, nutrition, and sleep and recovery sections with good, great, and elite benchmarks for each section. Okay? So today we're zooming into mobility. Right? For our good mobility, right, we want to be able to do a few different things. And to reiterate from part 1, good are things that we love everyone in the gym to be able to do. Right? These are not contortionist drills. These are positions you should be able to get into just to be able to navigate life with relative ease, right? So our first position we're going to talk about is just being able to squat to parallel depth with parallel feet. I encourage you to watch this one as opposed to just listening, so you can see the images we're going to be pulling up on the screen here. But a parallel squat just shows that mainly good ankle and hip mobility, which are 2 of just the key joints in our body that we want to be sure are moving well. Ideally every joint, but ankles, hips, spine, and shoulders are of great importance to us. Those are our big movers, right? Why parallel feet, Peter?
It's a good predictor of just what your hip external and internal rotation is. Some people, as we've seen, especially in older males, you'll see them walk with their toes out. And then that's generally a good sign that they've probably lost of internal hip rotation, so they live more in that middle range of what they own. So they may have 5 degrees in internal rotation and 45 degrees at external, so they're going to kind of sit in the middle of those 2 numbers. And so if we have those parallel feet, we know they can access a little bit on either side of those ranges, which show that the hips are probably moving pretty well.
Yeah. And your unique hip and pelvis structure might make you squat easier with feet turned out a little bit, and we'll talk about that as we get into one of our further categories here. But we all should at least be able to squat to parallel depth with parallel feet, right? And next up, we'll talk about the shoulder. So we want to see normative range of flexion, external rotation, and internal rotation of the shoulder. So for flexion, just pulled up a picture on the screen of me doing a little overhead mobility test. Can I stand with my butt, upper back, and head against the wall, and with a straight arm go up overhead and touch my thumb to that wall? For external rotation, can my elbow be at shoulder height, and can I reach back and touch the back of my wrist to the wall? And for internal rotation, can I bring my wrist down until the bottom of my wrist is about level with the front of my rib cage, right? So those are just all good indicators that you have a shoulder that moves well. That's the most mobile joint in your body. It should be able to do those things. And then lastly, I don't have pictures for these, but can your spine flex forward, extend backwards, bend laterally, and rotate pain-free? We didn't have clear metrics that would be easy for you to assess on your own or at home for these, but just can you do all those motions without limitation?
Yeah, I want to reiterate, a lot of people when they first come in, they can't do a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things that we're going after is, can we find a way through various practices to get people to access these ranges again? Some people, if they get back to here, that's great. We're not even trying to go farther there because we have other goals that are probably going to have more impact on this person's life. But we would love everybody to have these. So it could be some injuries, some surgeries, some accidents that have happened that you may not be able to get into these. Mm-hmm. But as much as possible, can we access these, especially like Kyle said on the spine stuff, can we do it pain-free?
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, so moving on to our great section, and here's where we're going to deviate a little bit from clear outcomes. These are actually all more practices. These are things that we want you to be able to do to get you further with your mobility. So first of all, do you just generally have pain-free movement? If we're going to call you someone with great mobility, can we move through the ranges you have without pain? And then 2 practices we'd love you to have, and kind of sharing them from Kelly Starrett and the folks at the Ready State. So I wanted to give them a shout out there. Do you have a daily mobility or a practice of sitting on the floor? Sitting on the floor is a great way to sneak in lots of mobility to your day. And the reason we put this practice here is because without lots of frequency, you're not going to be a very mobile person, right? If you do stretches twice a week and you sit in the chair 10 hours a day, which we'll talk more about in a second too, you're going to be pretty stiff. If you think of this as homework, you're not going to get very far. Mobility is a very fluid trait. It's very plastic. No matter how mobile you are, you sit in a car and drive for 6 hours to visit home in Sacramento. For me, I don't feel very good after. I need to stretch right away, right? So moving frequently is really, really valuable. So is there some sort of daily touch point here? And then on those lines, are you sitting in a chair for less than 6 hours a day? The chair is a very convenient invention that allows us to be in this position that's very comfortable, and there's nothing evil about that position other than the fact that it generally makes people not move very much because they can relax there and hang out there very passively, right? So between driving to work, between working your desk job, between watching TV at night, sitting down for meals, sitting time can add up a lot, and then people wonder why the one hip flexor stretch they did on Tuesday doesn't make their hips feel awesome when they sat for 12 hours a day the other 7 days of the week, right?
Yeah. Or, hey, I do yoga twice a week. How come I'm not like the instructor? Same there where that instructor's probably teaching every day, so they naturally have a mobility practice that's a part of their daily routine.
Yeah. So those are things we want to see people integrate into your lives before we stamp you as someone with elite mobility. Even if genetically, hey, maybe you are a little more loosey-goosey or hypermobile, like are these practices there just to have that lifestyle of movement? Okay. But moving on to our elite section, we'll come back to outcomes here. And before we get into them, contrary to the strength and power section, where you're not just going to walk into the gym and be able to deadlift double body weight, right? The elite goals here all are attainable, right? Your skeleton should be able to do these things when you were a young child. You probably could do all these things pretty easily. So the elite goal here is really getting back to these ranges that your body does have, you've just lost by not accessing them, and then how long can you maintain them, because it does get a little tougher with age as your tissue changes a little bit over time. Right. So first one here, looking at the ankle again, we love the 5-inch ankle dorsiflexion test. So if I get my big toe 5 inches away from a wall or a rack or something like that, which conveniently is about the length of a fist and thumb, even if you're a smaller person, it's a little smaller than that. Well, your shin's a little smaller too, so it kind of works well to have a proportional metric. So put your big toe a fist and thumb's length away from a target. Can I get my knee to that target without my heel leaving the floor? That would be a good expression of kind of full normative range at the ankle. Okay. Using that ankle range, you're going to be able to squat deeper. Can I squat to full depth now? So this will still vary a little bit from person to person what full depth is, depending on your hip sockets and pelvis structure. You also might find this a little easier if you do flare the feet out a little bit, again, depending on your structure. But just what we're referring to here is, can I comfortably hang out in a deep squat? Not just parallel where I'm at 90 degrees and my thighs are burning. Can I just drop down, hip crease below my knees, and actually find this as a restful position? Could I eat a meal here? This really is a position that should be comfortable for you if you can sink down to that level. Yeah.
I was going to say, and Kyle had mentioned, and we were talking about this earlier, can I take 5 or 6 breaths in this position, very restorative, very relaxed, without feeling like, oh my gosh, hurry up, tell me, 5 more seconds. Yeah. It's just I can hang out, no big deal. Same thing with that dorsiflexion. We're not just at in range, just please, tell me time's up. Just, I can get there, I can hang out. I'm like, cool, yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, I love that 5 breath test. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. And then moving on to one more hip mobility pattern, we're going to look at hip extension. So the picture I just pulled up on the left side of the screen for the full couch stretch is a nickname of this stretch. But if my knee could be at the base of a couch, I actually really prefer the base of a wall, so it's just a firmer object. Can I get all the way up into this half kneeling position, squeeze my back glute there to show that I still have access to my musculature in this position, that I'm not in this dumped pelvis position where I don't really have access to my own tissue, and can I again take 5 breaths from there? The second picture I'm going to pull up on the screen is a regressed version of that. If you're not there and you're like, how do I even work on that? That'd be an easier way to start, right, where I don't have that other foot all the way up.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, you can bring your knee a little bit farther away from the wall. The hardest thing for almost everybody here is they want to extend through their spine. And so that's why that glute contraction is so important, so imperative to know I'm moving where I'm supposed to move versus, I can do what your picture showed me. Yeah. So, use that other hand check. Is that glute engaged? Okay, cool. Now I know I'm moving purely from my hip and not extending from the spine.
Yeah, cool. And then for our shoulders, how do we take our shoulders a little bit farther? Well, not only can we get into those positions, but do we have some stability there? So we want to see some flexion and extension lift-off tests. So I'm laying down on my stomach, holding a PVC pipe in my hands with my arms overhead, and can I lift my hands off the floor? And again, take a comfortable 5 breaths there, not feel like I'm straining excessively, my head's not driving into the floor for leverage, I'm just comfortable there. And then for extension, can I get my almost into a push-up position with my knuckles on the floor, and then retract my shoulders and lift my knuckles off the floor. They are barely off the floor. I barely passed this test if you look at that picture. You could slide a credit card underneath there, and I'd be taking my 5 breaths, right? So do we have the shoulder range to be active and stable at end range? Okay. So boom, that's our mobility section. Let's move on to conditioning. And this was the one that we did the best at keeping really simple, which is hard for us to do. So yes. For the good zone of conditioning, we just wanted to talk about just being generally active. So do you average 8,000 steps a day, right? Why did we pick that number? 8,000 steps puts you above average, about in the middle of kind of the third quartile, according to the study of about 47,000 adults. The middle of the third quartile is about 7,800 steps. So, and within that third quartile, there was a 55% risk reduction in all-cause mortality, risk of dying from any cause, compared to the lowest quartile. So 10,000 is a nice round number. That's great. It is better than 8,000 by a little bit. The more, the merrier here. But 8,000 we think is a good, reasonable goal for a lot of people that still confers a lot of benefit.
And this number we're referring to outside of your training time. So if you come to the gym, you train for an hour, to me it's like you just leave your step counter to the side. What we're looking for is just movement throughout your day. Just having that practice of that. Not, I'm going to train for an hour super hard, I'm going to, or go for this hard run, and then I'm just going to sit on my butt for 10 hours. Yeah. We want these steps just kind of mixed out your day. These are not training steps, these are just movement. This is just what you do, this is what your body was meant to do.
Yeah. And this might take different amounts of intentionality based on what your lifestyle is. Like, again, I'm blessed to coach for a living. I coach 6 sessions or so a day most days, and my step count when I've worn a tracker in the past is always above 12,000 without even taking an extra walk. Hey, that's a gift, right? If you're more of a sedentary desk job type of person, well, then this might take more intentional. Maybe I get up and walk for 10 minutes in the morning, a little break at lunch, a little break in mid-afternoon, take a walk after dinner. Like, it might take much more intention depending on kind of what your lifestyle is. But that's the point. We want a lifestyle of movement, not just workouts and then a bunch of sedentary time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then to take it farther in the conditioning realm, we're just going to use the metric of VO2 max, which is a measure of how much oxygen your body can consume and utilize for hard efforts, right? So there's also a ton of research on the carryover between this and risk reduction in all-cause mortality. The further you go, the better. The biggest effect just from getting started, but the further you take it, still a profound effect. We've talked about that in past podcasts on conditioning. So our great metric here is going to be, are you in the top 25% for your age group, and our elite, are you in the top 2.5%? Okay? You can go get this test done in a lab, and they have a mask on you and kind of do it all 100% properly. But a great estimate that we've been using in the gym that I've had great success with people who have done both the accurate lab test and this protocol here is doing a 6-minute, really fun, but pretty hard test on the Echo Bike. So their max average wattage for 6 minutes, and then plugging that into the equation here on the screen, which we have in a spreadsheet for you too. We can take care of that for you if you're doing this in the gym. But then seeing where do I stack up on the following chart, right, compared to my peers. We got the female and male chart here, every decade listed, and then it's broken down into quartiles, the 0 to 25th percentile, 25th to 50th, 50 to 75th, 75th to 97.5, so that'd be your top 25%, and then the elite top 2.5%. Yeah, so just where do I stack up against my peers, and then am I okay with that? Am I okay with being great, or do I want to be elite? How far do you want to take it? There's, again, diminishing return on your investment and more work required, but if that's meaningful to you, go get after it.
Yeah, and it's amazing just even having, being that great for a lot of these guys that mainly just lift. If you are in that great category, top 25% of VO2 max, you'll notice you'll recover so much faster between your sets. Your recovery from day to day or day 1 to day 2 of your training will be better. So some people, I don't need this. And it's like, they're just, if you view it through that lens, it's still helpful. Yes, if you're not going to be, elite on the bike or going for, hey, I don't do half marathons. Who cares? But just having that good middle of the road will just make life easier to get through. Just like being stronger makes life easier.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. So that's the end of our 2 deep dives today on the mobility and conditioning sections. In summary, again, Let's get mobile and well-conditioned. Use this as a goal-setting tool and a way to share and celebrate hitting big milestones, but don't use this as a foolproof indicator of your health. So your current trajectory matters much more than your current level. So even if you're not at good yet, that's all right. Just put in the work and keep getting there and take it as far as you want to take it.
So I encourage you guys to track your steps, kind of just see where you're at. Hey, I'm pretty consistent. Awesome, good. If you want to go VO2, go ahead and do that. But I encourage you all to just check on those mobility patterns. Where am I at? Where am I doing well? Where am I not? A lot of people, they might be really stiff upper and pretty solid lower, and vice versa, depending on where you're at and what your typical job has been or lifestyle has been the last 30, 40 years.
Cool. Enjoy.